see a few more people joining. I think we might begin. So welcome everybody to our latest Talent in Tech discussion. My name is Justin Lessel and I'm the Marketing Manager at DevSkiller. DevSkiller is the leading technical screening platform that services customers in over 85 countries worldwide. I'm very excited to welcome you to our latest discussion called Secrets of Data-Driven Organizations. Now, before we begin and before I introduce our panelists, I've got three very quick housekeeping things to go over. First of all, this webinar is being recorded. So if you can't make it to the end of the session, or if you want to share it with your colleagues, you'll get a link to the recording later this week. Second of all, there will be a Q&A session at the end of this discussion. So if you've got any questions for us, you can leave them in the Q&A box that you see on the bottom of your screen. And last but not least, there is a post-webinar survey that we'll be sharing with you guys. So please take 2 minutes out of your time to give us some feedback about today's discussion. Alrighty, so now that that's out of the way, I think it might be time to introduce our panelists who have been patiently waiting. So I might start with Magda. Hi Magda, thank you very much for joining us today. Can you give us a little bit of background about yourself?
Hi guys, pleasure to be here. Happy to share some stories from the trenches with you. Actually, I've been working with the data probably my whole professional life, although some of my experiences might not correspond with the modern definition of what is exactly data-driven. And I started my career in strategy and finance, then moved to IT and technology, back to strategy in both consulting and business roles. And now I'm happy enough to bring both strategy and technology into one, building actually data-driven organization and driving its digital transformation in the telecommunication sector.
Awesome. Thank you very much. All right, Tomasz, why don't we go to you? Can you give us a little bit of background about yourself? We can't hear you, Tomasz. Give us a moment.
Can you hear me?
Yes, there we go.
All right. So welcome everybody. Totally excited to discuss data-driven organizations, one of my passions. I've been in the data and analytics world for over 15 years now, first in supply chain, in consumer goods, retail, then a bit of strategic consulting, and the last 10 years in high-tech and electronic and energy management industry. I think I'm very passionate about this topic because I see this topic, the data, the AI revolution, being the most significant trend changing the way we work, the way we live for the last 200 or 300 years. So very happy to share the experience, the learnings I have over these last 15 years. Currently leading the global analytics and AI team with Schneider Electric.
Awesome. Thank you very much. Okay, we're halfway there. Maybe I'll go to you next, Eliza. Can you give us a bit of background? Maybe let us know how long you've been working in this industry.
So for many years, I was working with technologies in insurance industry. And for the last 2 years, I'm deeply involved in organizing data management strategy for financial institution and national. I work for Nationale Nederlanden. And in my area of interest is building capabilities around traditional data integration, but also data governance, and my favorite, building cloud capabilities for advanced analytics.
Awesome, thank you. And last but certainly not least, Ashley, you're joining us from the US, so thank you very much for taking the time out of your workday. Can you give us a bit of background about yourself?
Yes, happy to be here. Thank you, Justin. As my esteemed colleagues have said, Magda, Tomasz, and Eliza, also very passionate about data. I came to the data capability through engineering. So my background is in metallurgy, specific in the aerospace industry, and ripe for data in manufacturing and engineering, and really got heavily involved with the Six Sigma capability, the Demings of the world, and understanding how data drives manufacturing and engineering processes. and you start pulling the thread more and more. What does it mean to have good data? And you end up in this world of data capability that is far beyond what I thought when I started in engineering 15, 16 years ago. So happy to be here now. I am the Chief Data Officer for PCC Metals, which is a manufacturing aerospace company.
Awesome. Okay, so now that we've got that out of the way, thank you again, everybody. We've got a lot to cover. Obviously, we're very honoured to have all of you guys joining the panel. A vast amount of experience combined between the four of you. So why don't we just jump straight into our first question? I'll direct this one to you, Tomasz. So what is your definition of a data-driven organization?
That's a great question because I think there is a lot of excitement on the market regarding becoming data-driven, and there are a lot of studies saying, well, if your company is going to be data-driven, your ROI will be 2.6% more. If you are data-driven, you have 3 times more probability of, becoming of getting growth, which is much more than the average, right? But then everybody is getting excited, but then the famous question of, okay, but what does it actually mean to be data-driven comes? And it's not an easy question to answer because you can handle this from different perspectives. My focus is on treating data-driven organization from the perspective of decision-making. Ashley just mentioned the famous Edwards Deming, and one of the key things Edwards Deming said was that data, the ultimate purpose of data, is to provide recommendation for action or the basis for taking action, right? So if we focus on this element, we see that the becoming data-driven is all about institutionalizing certain practices in the way decisions are being done across organization. And because you're going to do it, you're going to increase probability that quality of this decision will rise. And because of these, you're going to get more growth, more efficiency, more satisfied customers, etc., etc. What does it mean specifically? Well, first of all, you infuse data to your processes, right? But it's not only about looking at your past, saying, what was my sales last quarter? What was the number of visits on my website last week or yesterday? It's also about infusing into your decision-making processes insights, looking into the future. What are the probabilities? What are the options? Quantifying them, okay? It's also very characteristic for data-driven organization to be continuously testing, okay? Because data-driven organizations, what they do, they quantify the uncertainty. That's one of the key characteristics of having a data-driven culture. Most of the organizations, they just stay at the level of low, high, medium level risk, while data-driven organizations go to quantify those, because quantification of uncertainty is really very, very impactful for your mindset. And that's pushing you to test the unknown on a small scale, okay? The language is also very important because the language is a reflection of the company culture. One of the things I have a big challenge with internally in my current company is, we are a very international company with the presence in over 100 markets. And there are many expressions in language, my favorite in quotes, one being a lot of countries. Like, what does it even mean, right? Now, the reason why this is so important is, think about this. If specialist level person will use this phrase and SVP level person will use this phrase, obviously SVP wins because he's SVP. Now, if you bring numbers in, right? If you bring data in, well, then the discussion is completely changing. So language, experimentation, testing, quantification of uncertainty, infusing data for not only status quo summary, but also listing options and quantifying them with predictive insights. These are the key characteristics of a data-driven organization for me.
Awesome. Thank you. Does anyone else want to add something to that? Eliza, maybe you have your own definition.
I would just signify some elements of that. So you make sure, if you want to be a data-driven company, you make sure that your data creates value. Yes, you want to use the data for insights and for some better results. You make to be sure that your data are trustworthy. So you are really sure about what do they represent, and you want to access the data with the limited effort. And if you get all those three elements, then you can call yourself a data-driven organization.
Okay, awesome. Thank you for that, both of you. All right, so we want this discussion to be as interactive as possible. So we do have a few polls. I'll also allow our panelists to vote if you guys feel inclined. So I'm going to launch our first poll for today. It should appear on your screen now. And the question is, do you have plans to start building or expanding the data-driven competencies within your organization? And the options are, we are currently implementing such an initiative. We plan to launch it this year. We plan to launch it within the next 2 years. We don't have such an initiative. We've undergone this process already. I assume if our panelists did vote, they would probably be already along that process, having done so already. Now, there's some answers still coming through, so I'll just wait for those last couple and then end this poll, and I'm going to share the results. So they should pop up on your screen. So yes, we can see that a lot of people are currently implementing such an initiative. So they're in the early stages, not quite there, but beginning the journey, which I think is a nice segue into our next question. So Ashley, having lots of experience working in different companies like PCC and Schneider, of course, what does it look like at your organization? Do you implement such a plan to launch a strategic initiative to develop data-driven competencies? Maybe you can share some insights with our audience about how it works over at PCC.
Thank you. And a good lead in from Tomas there, because some of the comments around language and using the proper language and consistent language feeds into how you launch and implement these initiatives. So I found over time, there's a mechanistic way of doing it, much like Six Sigma, the way Six Sigma was brought into organizations in the 80s and 90s. There's a process and methodology to follow, and it really rooted in the hypothesis testing mindset. So everything Tomas said around test, that process to bring people into a data-driven culture in the 80s and 90s is just highlighted today with technology. So as the rate of complexity and unknown increases, our time to respond decreases. And so as you think about these challenges around implementing these strategic initiatives, I find, and I'm going to borrow this from a leader that both Tomas and I know, data problems are often people and process problems in disguise. And so as you put down the capabilities, okay, there's 7-8 capabilities of data, depending on where you source this from in DAMA and elsewhere. So you have data capabilities that you want to advance over time as you mature. But there's a change management aspect to it, the people side of using data. That is a really challenging one. So you have a common language you're trying to establish. You're trying to establish standardization and discipline. At PCC in particular, it's right for this kind of environment of production systems. So I also own the lean production system for the manufacturing sites because of my background. So through that, I'm able to provide a context and an environment as this change process happens within the organization. So as you pool data, as you expose it, and you want it to be AAA data, as we like to say, actionable, accurate, and accessible, somebody's got to do something with it. So I can create all these analytics. I can create reports. If somebody's not using them in their daily rhythms, their daily operation rhythms, and then taking actions on those reports, I really haven't truly succeeded in implementing a data-driven culture. Yes, the data is there if somebody needs it. Like Tomas said, you really want to pull it into your daily rhythms. And so luckily, I just happen to have the production system of how we set up standard work, our standard calendar and rhythms. And then we're using these reports. They become your source of truth. So if you have errors in your data, that's the time to expose it. If you let people go off and still maintain Excel spreadsheets while you're building advanced analytics, you're really not progressing where you need to be. And the other component I would say as we think about this and move to this data-driven truly is not getting emotional about the data. right? The data is a reflection of what's going on. So if you're trying to move your company, grow, whatever your initiative is, you have to embrace what the data is telling you if you wish to be a data-driven company. You can't say, well, I don't like the number. Can you go back and give me the one that came from Excel? There's this norming and storming phase that happens, I think, as you transition to really understanding, are we disciplined in governing what we say? We're doing what we say, and we're governing our data so that we're going to trust it as we make decisions going forward. So I would just wrap that up by saying discipline is a big factor as you implement a data-driven culture. It can't be people-centric. It has to be built in the process and operational rigor to the way the organization runs to be successful long-term.
Okay. Well, thank you very much for that. Okay. I think we'll move into our next question here. This one's actually for you, Magda. You've been sitting patiently for waiting for a turn to speak. So you of course have a lot of experience as well, and have embarked on I'm sure a number of data journeys across your career. So what advice or what early advice can you provide to people who are about to kick off such an initiative? Maybe even looking back, something that you could have done differently if you had your time over.
There are lots of bits and pieces that I can share, but maybe just firstly kind of sharing the journey that we went as a company. I work for Liberty Global and with a kind of focus on one of our operating company, UPC. What I can say that, the focus basically changes throughout the journey. And when we started those couple of years back, we started with sorting out the business intelligence area. And this is probably important message saying that today modern data-driven companies are also very much into the BI, aspect of their data journey. And it's very good to kind of, sort that out before jumping to some other, let's say, levels of data maturity. So we started with the BI area, building talent capacity, filling this BI expert specialist roles, collecting, cleaning, curating, actually the operational data first, then feeding into the warehouses, structuring coherent sets of reports with a primary aim to kind of inform business decision about our performance. So basically, when you think about the data maturity scale, we're kind of starting with being very accurate, trying to be accurate and timely with called descriptive analytics. So where we are today, what we have accomplished, where we are in terms of our business KPIs, and then moving to more predictive areas. So saying, okay, well, this is our historical performance, where we can, what our expectations are towards, the next month or the next, couple of years or the next budget year. So really starting with that area made already a huge kind of progress leap for us. And then in parallel, once halfway through this change, we actually started to introduce also data science and data engineering roles and capabilities, basically. Again, building talent pool. We will probably touch also that aspect later during our conversation, because it's actually probably a crucial aspect to have right people and to be able to develop further your talents also internally or sourcing from the market. It works both ways. We start developing kind of non-structured data platforms, lakes, building, first models, using more kind of ordinary statistics, then moving to the more space of machine learning, deep learning algorithms. And then, at the same time, we started also investing in the underlying IT capabilities and enablers, like rebuilding our IT architecture, moving to cloud, at least some of the apps, resources, building APIs, and so on to enable basically and to prepare to the future inside deployment. So that was an important step. And probably nowadays, currently, we are in the step of more like prescriptive analytics and what I'm calling kind of reinforcement of our organizational insight adoption capabilities. We both Ashley and Tomek and Elisa already kind of touched about this idea about people and culture, and also, being able to consume whatever we made out of the models or whatever kind of information we extract from the data, and also having the senior leadership to actually be able to say, okay, even this is something contradicting my gut feeling or my business, know-how. This is the data we can rely on, and then maybe automate the usage of the data, not only to inform specific decisions, but maybe automate further. And we are kind of in that area that we invest also in data ops ecosystem. We build automation to really drive these processes, and ultimately offer the best products, services, as well as the customers' experiences, and also giving tools to sales, to care people to be able to act probably more savvy and in more timely and with better kind of understanding what's going on with the customers, with our network, with our services, and so on. So this is where we are, and we are still thinking about the next development, because this is a journey, and it's a moving target. You probably never get it. That's also
it's a continuing process.
Story. Absolutely, yeah.
Well, thank you very much. I mean, you kind of touched on where we're going to sort of segue into the next chapter of this discussion, where we address sort of the talent, data talent specifically, and I think it's a good opportunity to launch our second poll. So just let me launch that one. And again, I encourage our panelists, if you want to vote to this, because I know you guys are responsible for hiring data professionals. So second poll is, what data roles are the most challenging to fill, within your organization? There's a word missing there. This is a multi-choice answer, so you can submit multiple answers. Data analysts, BI specialists, data scientists, data engineer, chief data officer, data ops specialist, or other. Maybe there's something else, and if it's not there and you want to, you can mention in the chat if you like as well, and we can touch on that as well. So you can see, there's a couple more answers. Just give it a couple of more minutes, or seconds, should I say. Okay. All right, let me just share those results. Okay, so we have a tie between data scientist and data engineer. Funnily enough, the two positions you mentioned in your previous response there, Magda. So I'll just stop sharing those results there. And I think it would be a nice opportunity for us to sort of segue here. Thomas, you yourself are responsible for filling your data team at Schneider Electric. Do you have any comments on the poll? Do you share similar experiences or challenges trying to fill those roles specifically that were mentioned, or perhaps other roles entirely?
Yeah, so I think I can say a couple of words to this, because Schneider is creating a huge AI hub in Warsaw. So we're going to be having a couple of hundreds of roles here. And I think my answer, I will comment on data scientist, data engineering dilemma. But first, let me share my experience. And my experience would be the answer other. Okay, because if you look at the statistics of, a lot of projects fail for the data analytics and AI. And to be precise, depending on the studies, between 65 to around 80%, where executives say that these type of projects don't really deliver on the promise, right? And if you look at the root causes why this is happening, you can say that the number one factor is that we fail to establish very good bridge between the business and the data and analytics function. Okay. Now, obviously, this requires a role of chief data officer or chief analytics officer handling his peers or her peers efficiently. But on the operational level, that's the roles of product manager or product owner or so-called customer success teams. Okay. And my point of view is that these are the most difficult roles. And if you look at the research, there is a very interesting research which McKinsey did, because around 2011, they did a big report called Big Data, the Next Innovation Frontier, when they predicted that data scientists will be the key talent shortage we're going to experience in the next 10 years. Then around 2017, I think, they put a report where they said, actually, it's not data scientists, which is the problem. They called this role translator, okay? And these are exactly product owners, product managers, these type of roles. Now, why? Because data scientists themselves, they don't push the agenda through the organization, okay? Now, data scientists and data engineers, I think, in particularly for people hiring in Poland, we are facing a massive spike in demand versus the supply, okay? And this is a serious stuff because obviously it's creating a lot of operational challenges, salary pressure, talent retention, etc. But I think these are all manageable challenges, okay? I think we have to look, for example, at the supply, and we have one of the best supplies on the market when it comes to universities producing these types of talents. Okay, so one of the key initiatives we do to make sure that we can manage these type of challenges, we are creating a senior layer of our organization when we have very experienced people from various domains, PhDs, professors, various people, practitioners of the field. And then we are creating very strong link to our universities, okay? And because of these, we are able to kind of create continuous production on this talent, which we grow from third or fourth year in the university. Okay. Then I think another practical thing to kind of fish for this type of talent is through various hackathons. Okay. Because this is a really the talent, at least in our experience, which we got because of sponsoring hackathons, etc., is just unbelievable.
And to clarify, as a sourcing technique, you mean to find?
Yes, as a sourcing technique, right? But then I think one of the critical things for data scientists is also to look beyond traditional motivation measures like salaries, cars, phones, or whatever, right? I think if I look at data scientists who, for example, decided to switch to other company, to other challenge, one of the key factors is the purpose behind the company. Okay, there is a very strong desire in this community to work on problems that are important to humanity, that can help us, live better, etc. And there is less and less tolerance for some shady practices around data privacy and, companies exploiting data sets to do things which are not necessarily making people live healthier, happier, and etc. Number two is growth. And growth does not necessarily mean being promoted every 2 years, but developing new skills. If I look at my team, we have employee engagement at the level of 90%. And if we deep dive about why do we have this, there are two factors differentiating us. One is psychological safety, and the second one is growth. All our data engineers and data scientists emphasize that they stay with us because they have nearly unlimited growth opportunities. Okay. And that would be my take on this problem about this challenging role, Justin.
Thank you. I'm not sure, Ashley, if you wanted to add anything here. Did you share similar experiences to Tomasz at PCC?
Absolutely. So not much more to add to that other than a real life case of putting what you said, Tomasz, into practice. So our organization sits in the business, which we'll talk about later, I think, with another question. But I come from engineering, from metallurgy, from aerospace. So I have the context of understanding the process and the product that we make. And so through that, the way my organization is actually stacked today for these roles, as I alluded to earlier, I have the traditional data team. So the BI analysts, data engineers, DevOps, but I also have our team that came out of operations in the business. So there are product owners, there are lean folks, they're providing context for what it is we're making to ensure that the value we bring is tied out to the business. So I sit in the business. This is my peer set. We spend most of our time. I have to walk the floor every morning. So all my analysts sit in a manufacturing site. So we are unique in that regard. And I ask that they're on the daily walks. So they're in the daily operational rhythms. They feel the cadence of the team and understanding the speed at which we're delivering and the unique problems that happen as the problems happen. And so we're positioned that way. And everything Tomas said is totally transitioned for the way PCC is, in particular metals, is thinking about collecting and using their data. So I echo everything you said, Tomas, there. Just to provide a use case for that. It really does make a difference in terms of sustainability.
Yeah, thank you very much.
If it's just instead to kind of jump in, but if I can kind of build on what also Thomas and Ashley said about also my experiences, because I strongly believe that this other role again is one of the key enablers for this kind of future, really getting absolutely data-driven aspect of the organizational development. And first, I believe that there is I even cannot name the position or a role that we need to recruit to actually be a bridge between business teams, really hardly, embedded into their domains, and then actually the outside world of the data scientists and data engineers that usually are not domain kind of savvy. They know their own competency, but not exactly the language difference. I remember when I joined one of the startups that this is a very much into top end machine learning, deep learning algorithms, and so on. We start building some data science solution for the business, and we were all talking using the same words. We used pipeline strategy, and our data scientists, data engineers, developers, they always use the same words. But you know what? There was nothing that actually joined those two words together.
Yeah.
We're like completely like from the moon and the Mars. Basically, nobody was on the same page, and we even couldn't notice that. So the person, and it's also our own currently journey, probably at Liberty and at UPC, that we invest heavily in the both data and digital capabilities of non-IT or data science or data engineers people to actually be able to translate the business needs. And then we are also thinking, how to bridge that chasm between, those two words. Because, when you think about the technical decomposition that that there are like people that cares with the ingestion of the data, then the process, that the serve. And then, there are these task-oriented teams that actually, they are orthogonal to the change we need to deliver to the organization. So they are like still silos in a sense, and everybody's speaking their own language. They have their own know-how, but the actually ability to kind of bring everything together on the same page and drive some change, that's a huge challenge in itself.
Yeah.
And then that's what I would like to stress, because it was also both my personal and kind of organizational challenges that we are still facing for sure in the process.
I mean, sort of a natural question that comes out of this, and any one of you can answer this, but you speak on this kind of chasm between silos of thought within an organization. Can you envision, I don't know, like a new role being born out of this problem, or is that something that's already kind of prevalent in the industry, or is it still?
There is a big debate on this in the industry, but the debate is most of the time a little bit short-sighted, right? Because the debate was that, okay, we needed somebody who's going to coordinate between development team and the business, and we're going to put product owner. Product owner will take in charge of the application, is going to coordinate with business, etc. Now, very quickly, people realize that's just beginning of the journey, because product owner is, in particular in large organization, overwhelmed with the need of coordination between business stakeholders, communication. And after 3 months, the development team comes back to you saying, we don't really have product owner. He is spending most of the time with the business, not translating, not doing backlog prioritization, etc. Right? The way we envision this to be, and so what the market is discussing is to put one role ahead of product owner, which they call product manager. Who's gonna do the pre-work for product owner, and then product owner can focus really on the role of product owner. Now, I believe that this is short-sighted because this is undervaluing what we try to do here, because we don't try to push one up. Okay, we try to transform the business to use data to become the data-driven organization, as we discussed, right? And the role we are envisioning to manage this is what we call analytics and AI business partner, who's gonna be sitting on the side of the business, each of the domains like sales and marketing, pricing, etc., reporting to the domain owner, but then being coordinated as a community by person leading analytics and AI. And most of the time coming from the business, but being heavily trained on data and analytics topics, okay? Because only if we manage to plug in at this level, then, of course, it does not mean all the problems will be solved automatically, but that means that we're gonna create sustainable basic for structured decision-making in the right way. And we're going to be able to isolate most of these challenges which currently product owners are handling, which, by the way, is starting to create number one factor for product owner changing the job. Too much interference from stakeholders. Mm-hmm. Okay. And that's, I believe, will help us to solve this problem in sustainable way for the coming few years.
Awesome. Thank you. Yeah. I'm not sure if anyone else has anything next to add. That was just kind of a follow-up question.
Interesting to see how that it's interesting to see how that will work itself out, Tomas, as you have these different models of larger organizations as Schneider versus a smaller organization. What does that role do? How does it morph a little bit? Because the problem is the same, but how you structure those roles or what you tie to them are probably going to be company dependent in terms of size and how you're already positioned in the organization. I'd imagine be a key factor in that.
Totally. I think that the need is the same regardless of what is the size of the organization, which is the need is to manage mindset change, communication change, stakeholder relationship, aligning people on the use case prioritization, etc. Right? And look, if the organization is acting with first steps on small scale, I think strong product managers / product owner can manage this. But once you grow, I think with the size of the organization, this type of position is becoming necessary as a business partner because we don't have to reinvent the wheel in terms of structure. How HR is or finance or other big functions, how are they dealing with business? It's in exactly the same way for years and it somehow works. All right. And we just want to replicate this. And I think we have first experiments on this and can tell you it's working like a charm.
That's wonderful. I would add that in addition to training people on these digital and data technologies from the business, it's a really big piece is this change management capability. So I think as you go, your organization really has to think about, do I have a formal change management process? Do I train people on how they go out and create a vision and mobilize teams in a very structured way and think about these change management aspects? You have the technical bit, and then you have the EQ, soft skill bit, and it has to go along with it.
And perhaps just one other aspect, because Tomasz, you've kind of briefly touched on what is kind of now the new developments around that area, how to manage that. We start to test the data mesh approach in terms of thinking that still, the domain-driven data ownership should stay, with these areas. And then you build something like a role of data as a product. So you have a data product owner that stays in the domain. And then, of course, there's a kind of federated, computational governance, self-service infrastructure as a platform. But basically, you try to break the silos and keep the domain expertise because you have a smaller teams that are very much oriented into a given area, but they can kind of deliver, the full process of data management from, the collection to information, insights, deployment, and everything. Although I believe it's still early, I'm not sure if it might create other, problems, silos, or inefficiencies. It's more like a kind of new ideas that being kind of tested, and we are kind of, let's see what will happen, in the near future in that area. But it's certainly an exciting kind of proof of concept, piloting different approaches.
Yeah, thank you. I mean, it's an interesting topic that we kind of moved into. I mean, this is the point of our talent in tech discussions, because of new roles that are, being born out of, business problems. So, I'm just going to move along now. But thank you everyone for your responses. I mean, Tomek, you did briefly mention this one, but Eliza, I think I might ask this next question for you. What is the role of developing the capabilities of data professionals within your organization? We touched on the point of talent shortage and stuff like that. And one of the solutions is potentially reskilling and training growth opportunities like Tomek alluded to in his answer a few moments ago.
So I would say from the perspective also maybe not so big organization, just the middle one. This is just because Tomasz had some great ideas about working with the universities and so on. But when you are building a team that is going to work on new capabilities with data and analytics, with cloud, from my experience, a lot of roles cannot be recruited from the market just like that, because you have always some shortages. So you have to think about, the potential of your people that you have inside, and think about how you're going to upskill or reskill them. And then it is also about building a team that will be enthusiastic about experimenting, exploring, testing new approaches, and then also at some point making sure that there will be some business result out of that. So this is not that I think that the challenge for me was to find the right mixture of people with enough technological skills, enough open-minded, with enough talent and good learning skills, and then formulate a team out of them. Yes, to be ready to move our technical environment to the next level, and also just with the same challenges that you talk, that my friends talk here about it. We were trying to put a good communication with the business product owners, with the potential data owners, or just some digital business leaders across our company, just to making sure that what we want to build is really needed, and then there will be some use cases within the data science area, and we will have the proper data to fill in those use cases and to really make some value of that. And this is a process that is taking some time. We do it in the iterative way. We have to discuss it and think what, on a regular basis, what is going well, what is going bad, and to change our course of action. So this is really important that everybody understand that not all the definitions are clear, that people might have different goals, and they might be not so easy to translate between different teams. So in my experience, what was most challenging is that thinking about developing teams was not only about developing each of the team member, because this is clear. I need to have some engineers. I can give them some assignments how to build the knowledge by themselves. I think the most challenge was to create the team and to develop the team as a whole, just that they have a set of skills that is bringing those value together. Yes, so like cloud architect, DevOps engineer, developer, data engineer, and then data governance, data architect, and then also to talk to the cloud infrastructure and to build something all together.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Thank you very much. I think it's important that there's skills and competencies. There's often kind of two confused topics, but they each have their own meaning, especially when you go about building data teams, which all of you guys have got a lot of experience doing. Okay, we've got 3 questions left actually. I guess we kind of touched on this already, but it would be an interesting way to sort of move along with the conversation. So it's definitely apparent to become a data-driven organization that you need buy-in from the top down, basically across the whole organization. So I'll open this up maybe for you, Ashley. So how do you work with senior leadership to get them on board with data-driven initiatives? Obviously, this can go either way, I think, from what everyone's been saying already in the discussion.
Yep. Great. So I think the first thing is listening. So I spend a lot of time with the VPs, my peers, to understand in their meetings, in their rhythms, how they're being pressured or pushed for whatever deliverable they have from the business operations side of the organization. Plus, with the context I have of just coming out of this world, I didn't grow up through data, through the IT or any of these things. I really came out of being an engineer in this space. So for me, I have a background and understanding. And I've always thought, as it related to Six Sigma or data in this regard, operations team leadership has a mental model. Their mental model was created based on their experience where they sit in the organization. So I've tried to match the language of data to their mental model. So for me, sitting in a manufacturing company, it's very clear that we design products, we go manufacture them, they get tested so we all fly safely, and it gets shipped to the next phase in the supply chain. So the way that I talk about data is using that exact language. So I'm building a greenfield site. Well, what does that mean? I need this data warehouse environment where I'm collecting, storing, processing data. That becomes my warehouse. And then I have equipment that I bring in, and I think about what's my capacity in my equipment so that I'm moving metal through. And so I use that same language when I talk to them. Okay, just like you understand that, and here's where I've reached a constraint or capacity. So you've asked for all these requests. I have one data engineer, which means I am limited at this constraint, and it's language that they're used to using because I'm using manufacturing language for them. So for me, the vision of what they wanted, I don't think they fully understood data. They just knew that they could be using data different, that it's maybe an asset they haven't thought about before. And so for me, when I talk to leadership or bringing them on board, I always try to address it in their language and then say, okay, just like that, here's what I mean when I say this. And so I'm bringing them along at a speed that makes sense. I'm not creating this new mental model and just say, here you go, here's this model that they've never seen. I'm trying to build a bridge between what you know, and I'm going to teach you these components. And this is what it means when I'm executing this data strategy, which is at the behest of you. It's not my own data strategy. I wrote it based on the business. So I think having context has been helpful to connect in their language.
Yeah, for sure. I'm not sure if anyone else has anything else to add here. Magda or Eliza, do you have anything to add here? No?
I'm very much in line with what Ashley was kind of saying. another maybe aspect that's briefly, it's absolutely important, and we are kind of lucky that we get this kind of hands-on full support from our global leadership. And it is on the agenda of our company, of our operating companies. We just constantly, discussing, reviewing, and this is a moment where you can actually obtain, the approval, the acceptance. Some can address bottlenecks in the process or in talent pool or whatever. There is a place and the space in the agenda of the senior leadership in our company to actually have that discussion, which is really helpful. With one element that I saw that, each time I think that we already get this alignment and understanding what are the next steps, what we need. We sometimes need to get back to this element of discussing, why we are doing it, just educating more about the next steps. It is a kind of, iterative process. It's even if I'm sure that we are completely aligned, we understand again, trying to speak the same language. Sometimes we need to get back and say, okay, let's get back to that topic. What does it really mean for us? How we can move forward and so on. So it is moving in kind of, circles, but hopefully up in the trend and in the development. But it is to enforce in terms of, getting this also kind of educational component that it's still very, very important and valid for us.
Yeah. I could imagine it'd be pretty difficult to get approval or buy-in when they don't understand anything that you're talking about. You have to communicate on their level. Okay, I will launch our last poll in a moment. I think given that we're nearing the end of our conversation, it might be a good time to ask this question, which I will just launch. So which of these best describes where your organization is on the data journey? Data resistant, data aware, data guided, data savvy, or data driven? I think given that we've covered, I think, quite a variety of topics already, that you're hopefully a little bit more aware of where you are on your journey at the moment. Okay, there's a couple more coming through. Ooh. Okay. I'll end this and share the results. Yeah, so as we can see, data aware took first place, but data guided as well had some votes, and data driven, which is interesting to see that some people here are actually fully on that path already. Okay, so what I might do is because we're nearing the end, so we've got a couple of questions to get through. We'll try to get through them all. So, Tomek, if you can say in a few words, what are the critical steps to undertake to become a fully fledged data-driven organization, given that people are kind of still in the early stages of that journey?
Yeah, I think I can probably mention 5 things, like a checklist, which are critical on this journey. And frankly speaking, it doesn't matter if it's just the beginning of the journey or you feel like you're already there. And it all starts with the top leadership. Okay. And it's not only about giving you a budget or the headcount, you go hire hundreds of people. It's about making sure that your top leadership is aware this is one of the deepest transformations they're going to go through in their entire business life. And ideally getting such high support that you are able to infuse fresh members into your senior management who can, they might not be hands-on coders or data scientists, but they are hands-on in terms of leveraging data for business benefit. Because again, if you look at the data, O'Reilly ran an amazing survey, which was, what does prevent you from becoming a data-driven organization? Answer number 1, 39% of votes, because of lack of understanding of top management to how analytics can change business. Answer number 2, 34%, because of competing priorities and because of this lack of bandwidth of top management. Okay. I think number 2 is once you have this buy-in, then you start to bring in right people. And obviously this might be done simultaneously because first somebody is hired and this person evangelizes as chief data or chief analytics officer, this top management thing. But after this person number one, you start to bring in more talent, starting with these other roles who can be enough of multitasking to do both technical and business tasks at the beginning, in particular if you're a small size organization, and then you grow from there. Okay. Number three is Ashley used our favorite acronym, AAA data, right? Accurate, accessible, and available. And this one, collecting data in structured way, making this data available is my point number 3 on the checklist. Number 4 would be technology stack, making sure you're working with the right things, in particular cloud, because for data storage, etc. I mean, we still find people who believe that cloud is not really an option, which is surprising considering it's 2022, but really moving your data to cloud, making sure your architecture is scalable based on the cloud is really, really, really critical. And then finally, I would say it's methodology, which would be expressed into fast and simple experiments, methodology based on agile and product thinking. Okay. And I think obviously it's, there are many other aspects. I think maybe just one to add would be what Ashley mentioned before, formalized methodology of change management. Okay. And if you go through these 6 aspects, I think your chances of going into becoming sustainable, that data-driven organization are getting really high.
Mm-hmm. Awesome. Okay. I think thanks very much for that, Tomek. We've got time for one more question. I can see a couple of questions in the Q&A as well, so we'll try to get to them. But I'll open this up to any of you if you guys can take this. So what single piece of advice can you provide for those who are embarking on their data journey? Maybe something that you would have changed over, or maybe even particularly with some challenges that you're predicting for the year ahead. Anyone of you? Maybe Magda, if you'd like to take the lead. Sorry.
After what Thomas was kind of, you've kind of nailed it. I mean, what can you do? I mean, say more. Yeah. I would fully kind of support what Thomas was saying. I believe that maybe one thing to add is just like you might dream big, but really start small in terms of, what are the next steps? Trying, not to eat elephant at the one go, scale up, build capability, invest in cloud, data ops, ecosystem partners, all the roles, and then having big teams and then looking at each other and kind of saying, okay, we've spent so much time, time and resources, and what next? And I remember one of my clients from back of my consulting times, they were saying, look, we've spent, some millions of euros or US dollars, doesn't matter actually the currency, 3 years is sticking, we have this great place, it's even better than, Google campus. And then we are just looking when do we have something useful for the business, and we are still kind of, keeping our fingers crossed. So maybe they had a big bang, but it's extremely difficult to grow from like one use case or one case to actually bring some sustainable value, even in the one line of business or in one area. So I would really try not to eat elephant in the one go, and then cut it into the small steps. And then really, this is another story from the trenches also that we share with our chief people officer and her team, is just really invest heavily, meaning time and mindset of the leadership into this fail-safe environment, not only data culture, how to manage data, how to consume it, but really just to make this place and space for the people to really, make mistakes, learn from it, and then even fail fast, but just make it, kind of safe to to try new things. Even you have a great talent, probably you will fail at one point or another. There's a certainty. And if you don't have that, you will never will be able to embark on the journey and succeed. So that's my kind of key takeaways from this.
Sure. Yeah, if I may, I just saw some comments in the chat briefly because we are right at time. But data culture you alluded to. Can any of you have any sort of advice with sort of buy-in with data culture, like from your experience? Does anyone have anything they could?
I think that you are referring to the question around Salesforce, right? Like, how do you convince Salesforce that your models were better than their experience? Yeah. My take on this would be that, first of all, why should we convince Salesforce that they are worse than the models? Okay, because if we make it a competition, then by default, we're going to lose this battle. Okay. I think where we want to be is that on the one extreme, you have pure human judgment. On the other side, you have pure AI, right? And depending on which business type you're in, you're going to be closer to one or closer to the other. I think the question is more around salespeople trusting the results of your model good enough so that they are starting to take actions on this, okay? In our case, the first thing was to engage them very deeply into model development, okay, and to engage them into design about how these applications should be working, etc. Second was to create in the applications feedback loops. So, for example, model is recommending to do something with given customer, and salesperson is taking final call and giving feedback if this recommendation was working or not, okay. And because of this, we are hitting two birds with one stone. First is salespeople feel in the driving seat, okay? And second, our model is just becoming better and better because we get more and more feedback and we get more and more knowledge, which we reuse to other cases. Finally, we are not fighting for accuracy. We are just fully prepared that model will face some time. However, what we try to do is to find key allies in a sales organization. People being key influencers. It's like in primary school, right? There is a guy wearing on Monday yellow T-shirt with roses, and 3 days later, half of the school is doing this, right? And we are trying to identify those people in the organization and work with them to deploy the models with the Salesforce. And look, if you do it, it takes time, it takes patience, but we have fantastic salespeople. Some of them got inspired by the Commodore so much that 2 years ago, we had the first cases of salespeople graduating big data postgraduate studies. So these are a couple of pieces of advice, and I think it's a very long topic, which we probably will not be able to nail right now, but very happy to continue this conversation.
Yeah. Thank you very much. Yeah, I don't want to cut you short when you're on a roll, but yeah, we are kind of right at time now. So I'd just like to say thank you, first of all, for our panelists for taking part in today's discussion. That was really interesting. And of course, all of you who joined. We will be hosting a follow-up discussion in 2 weeks' time, basically on data science, data talent recruitment, called How to Source and Recruit Data Professionals Effectively. So if you'd like to join in on that one, keep an eye out on your inbox for an invitation to that. But one more time, thank you very much, all of you, for joining. Thank you very much to our panelists. And we'll see you next time. Thank you guys very much.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.